It all started on a quiet Thursday morning. My husband had just packed up for a last minute business trip, kissing me goodbye like it was just another normal day. But something about that moment stuck with me, the way he didn't look back, the silence that followed as the car disappeared down the road. That's when it hit me. I was completely alone. The house felt colder, the air heavier, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was no one's priority. I tried to fill the silence, cleaned the kitchen twice, rearranged the living room, even attempted baking, something he always said I was terrible at, but nothing worked. The loneliness kept creeping in, slow and steady, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. That's when I decided to take a walk, to clear my mind, maybe feel something different. I ended up by the stables just outside town. I'd passed them 100 times, never really paying attention, but that day, something pulled me in. That's where I met Storm, a beautiful, strong black horse with the gentlest eyes I'd ever seen. He was different, calmer, like he could feel everything I wasn't saying out loud. The stable owner asked if I wanted to feed him, maybe brush him down a little. I said yes before I even thought about it. What happened next wasn't anything I planned. It wasn't wild or crazy. It was quiet, real. Something about being with Storm made the silence feel less empty. But what started as a harmless visit turned into something deeper, a secret I never expected to keep. And if I'm being honest, I still don't know if I crossed a line. But what I do know is that day changed everything. I kept going back to the stables. At first, I told myself it was just something to pass the time while my husband was away, something harmless. But each visit felt more personal than the last. The way Storm would walk up to me without hesitation, the way his breath warmed my hand, the way he listened, it felt like he understood more than most people ever could. That connection, it wasn't just comforting, it was addictive. I found myself sharing things I hadn't told anyone. Out loud, in that quiet barn, I'd talk to him about how distant my marriage had become, how I often felt like a shadow in my own home. No judgment, no advice, just presence. It was strange, I know. Some might say it was just me projecting emotions. But when you're lonely, deeply lonely, even the smallest bit of connection feels like a lifeline. The stable owner, Mr. Calhoun, was kind but kept his distance. He noticed how often I came, and one day he said, Storm doesn't take to many folks, but he seems to trust you. That hit harder than I expected. Trust. It had been so long since I felt truly trusted, or trusted anyone back. Mr. Calhoun let me help with feeding and cleaning up. It gave me a sense of purpose. I wasn't just waiting around anymore, but with every visit, something else started to grow, something I didn't want to admit. I began dreading my husband's return. The silence at home felt safer than the coldness between us. We hadn't truly talked in months, maybe longer. And now with Storm, I had something that made me feel seen. It scared me how easily I slipped into that world, how badly I didn't want to let it go. One afternoon, I found myself just standing in the barn long after the sun had set. I had lost track of time. My phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from my husband. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. I didn't want to call back, not yet. Maybe not at all. That night, I dreamed of hooves pounding through fog, of being carried away, free and wild. And when I woke up, I wasn't sure if it was just a dream or a warning. Something had shifted, and I couldn't unfeel it. The next morning, I avoided my phone. I didn't want to hear my husband's voice, not while everything inside me still felt unsettled. I told myself I'd call him later, once I sorted out my thoughts, but deep down, I already knew that wasn't true. Something had shifted, and pretending like everything was normal felt like lying to both of us. At the stables, Storm was waiting near the fence, just like he always did. It was as if he could feel my unrest. I walked straight to him, pressed my forehead against his, and let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Mr. Calhoun came by a little while later and said he needed help transporting a few supplies into town. It was the first time he trusted me with anything outside the barn, and I didn't hesitate to say yes. Maybe I just needed a distraction, or maybe I wanted to feel useful for once. While we drove, he glanced at me and asked gently, "You okay? You seem far away lately." I forced a smile and nodded, but I think he knew I was lying. There was something fatherly about him. Not nosy, just observant. It made me feel even more exposed. Later that evening, I saw something on my husband's social media. A photo, him out with colleagues, laughing, holding a drink. It should have made me happy to see him relaxed. But instead, I felt a strange emptiness, almost like jealousy. Not of the people around him, but of the ease he carried, the comfort he seemed to find away from home. And then came the message. Just a few words. "Can we talk?" Something's not right. I stared at it for a long time. Did he sense it too? The gap growing between us, or was it something else entirely? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moments at the stables, the way Storm responded to me, the quiet understanding we shared. I wasn't crazy. Something real was happening. Not romantic, not physical, but deeply emotional. And maybe that was even more dangerous. Because as the days passed, I found myself choosing the barn over my own home, silence over awkward conversations, and a horse's quiet loyalty over a man I no longer recognized. Something was coming. I could feel it. I just didn't know which part of my life would fall apart first. The next few days passed in a blur. My husband was texting more, calling too, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Every time his name popped up on the screen, my chest tightened. I wasn't ready for that conversation. Not when I barely understood what I was feeling myself. I kept telling myself I'd call back tomorrow, but tomorrow never came. Instead, I spent almost every waking moment at the stables. I even started helping out with early feedings and late night checks. Mr. Calhoun didn't ask questions, just let me be. Maybe he understood in his own way. Storm had become more than a horse to me. He was a safe place, a mirror for everything I didn't have the words for. Sometimes, just sitting next to him in the quiet barn felt more real than any conversation I'd had with my husband in months. One evening, a storm rolled in, fast and violent. The wind howled through the trees and the rain came down in sheets. Mr. Calhoun called me in a panic, said a tree had fallen near the back fence and Storm was spooked. I rushed out without thinking, heart pounding as I pulled on boots and grabbed my keys. The drive through the rain was a blur, headlights slicing through the darkness. When I got there, Storm was pacing, restless, his eyes wild. I climbed into the pen without hesitation, calling his name gently, trying to calm him. My voice cracked from the wind and the cold, but I didn't care. He stopped suddenly, locking eyes with me, and for a split second, the world went still. Then headlights flashed behind me, a car pulling up. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. My husband had come back early. I froze. The wind whipped around us, thunder rumbling above. I heard the car door slam, footsteps squishing through the mud. He was coming closer. I didn't move. I couldn't. My hands were still on Storm's neck, my body soaked, my heart somewhere between fear and relief, and something else I couldn't name. I knew in that moment everything was about to change. I just didn't know how much or who would walk away first. I didn't turn around right away. I just stood there, soaked to the bone, hands trembling against Storm's warm coat. My husband's footsteps stopped a few feet behind me, but the silence between us was louder than the thunder crashing above. I could feel the weight of his stare. Heavy, confused, maybe even angry. "What the hell is going on?" he finally said, voice low, tight. I slowly turned, blinking through the rain. His face was half lit by the headlights, eyes narrowed, lips pressed into a hard line. He wasn't just surprised to see me there, he looked hurt. And for a moment, I couldn't tell if I was more afraid of what he thought I was doing or how close he might be to the truth. I was helping calm him down, I said, barely audible. He was scared. The tree. "Yeah, I got that part." He cut in, glancing at the broken fence and branches scattered across the field. Then his gaze shifted back to me. "But what are you doing here? Night after night? You don't even answer my calls." I didn't have an answer he'd accept. Because the truth wasn't simple. It wasn't about just the horse, or the barn, or Mr. Calhoun. It was about everything we hadn't said in so long. The silence that stretched between us in our own home, the way we'd grown into strangers under the same roof. Then came the second blow. "You're not the only one with secrets," Gunty said, stepping closer, rain dripping from his hair. "I wasn't just away for work." My breath caught. For a second, the world seemed to freeze. "There's someone else," he continued. "It's not serious. Or maybe it is. I don't know, but I couldn't tell you, not with the way things have been between us." The barn light flickered behind him, casting strange shadows across his face. My fingers slipped from Storm's neck as the truth settled in my chest like a stone. I should have felt betrayal, rage, something sharp. But all I felt was stillness, like I'd known all along. He looked down as if ashamed. I came back to talk, maybe fix things, or maybe just end them the right way. I stood there, rain seeping through every layer of me, and suddenly, the walls I'd been holding up cracked. Not because of what he said, but because I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. Because deep down, I'd already let him go. But before I could say a word, Mr. Calhoun appeared at the barn door, shouting something about the back gates swinging open and more horses getting restless. Storm reared slightly, sensing the tension. My husband flinched, and that's when it hit me. The moment wasn't about our marriage anymore. Something bigger was happening, something urgent. A choice was hanging in the air, one I hadn't seen coming, and we were all standing right in the middle of it. Storm settled as I stepped back, gently guiding him toward his stall. My husband stood in the doorway, drenched and silent, watching me in a way he hadn't in a long time. Not with anger, but with something closer to understanding. Mr. Calhoun rushed past us, heading toward the open gate in the back, and for a moment, we were alone again. The storm outside had quieted, but the one between us had already passed. I turned to him and finally said what needed to be said. "We've both been lost for a while, pretending, waiting for something to change, but it never did." He nodded, slow and tired. "I think we both held on longer than we should have." There was no shouting, no dramatic goodbye, just truth. And that was enough. Sometimes the loudest endings are the quietest. We walked to the truck in silence, and I handed him the car keys. "Go home. I'll stay back and help Calhoun clean up." He didn't argue. He just looked at me one last time, like he wanted to say something more, then got in and drove off. After everything, it wasn't pain I felt. It was peace. Strange, soft peace. In the days that followed, I kept coming back to the barn, not out of escape, but because I wanted to. I talked more with Mr. Calhoun, helped care for the horses, and slowly rebuilt myself. Storm remained by my side, steady and sure, like he always had been. People started asking questions, neighbors, friends, even family. Why the horses? Why now? And my answer stayed the same. Because sometimes, when everything else falls apart, you find yourself in the quiet places, in the company that doesn't ask anything of you except honesty. I never looked at Storm the same again. Not just as a horse, but as the reminder of who I became when I stopped pretending. My husband and I didn't reunite, but we found closure. That was enough. And now, when the world gets loud, I go back to the stables. Because that's where I remembered how to listen. Where I learned that love doesn't always look the way you expect, but sometimes it finds you when you least expect it. Even in the rain, even in silence, even with a horse,